Chapter 1. The First Shot Fired. I never thought the trouble would start over muffins. That Thursday morning, like clockwork, I unlocked the front doors of Benny's Roost Cafe, flipped on the warm orange lights, and turned the sign to open. My regulars, construction crews, moms after school drop-off, and a few older vets would be rolling in any minute. The smell of cinnamon rolls and dark roast coffee drifted down the sidewalk. This little corner cafe had been my dream ever since I left my job in IT to do something that made people smile. And for 2 years straight, that dream had gone just fine. Until Karen moved in. She wasn't a customer. She didn't drink coffee. She didn't smile. She wasn't even a resident at first, just a consultant who moved into the HOA-run business complex 2 doors down from my cafe. She had inherited her late brother's property, an office space used by her wellness brand, which was really just a website and a pile of lavender candles. What she did bring, though, was a clipboard, a sour attitude, and a mountain of complaints. It started small. On my second day of knowing her, she walked into my cafe, not to order anything, but to tell me my sandwich board was 3 inches too far onto the sidewalk. Then it was the garbage bins. Then the umbrellas on my patio weren't neutral tones. Then came the real kicker. She told me my business signage was in violation of HOA uniform design standards. I explained, politely, that my business wasn't part of the HOA. The building was commercial but privately owned. I'd leased it directly from the previous landlord under a different set of agreements. Her response? Well, it's only a matter of time before that changes. I brushed it off at first. Every town has a Karen. But this one was organized, well-connected, and apparently determined to bring the entire plaza into alignment. She had wormed her way onto the HOA board overseeing the surrounding residential area, and she was lobbying to expand the HOA's oversight to include the nearby strip of commercial units. Still, I focused on my work. That's what I knew. Business was good. People loved the cafe, but that made Karen even more bitter. A week later, things escalated. I got a letter, not a city notice, not a landlord message, but an HOA violation warning, claiming I'd exceeded noise levels and created visual clutter with my chalkboard menus. It was unsigned, typed, and delivered in my mailbox. I laughed it off until I saw the same letter taped to the inside of my front window the next morning in front of my customers. That's when I realized this wasn't just about rules. Karen wanted me gone. I tried the direct route. I walked into her office, small, quiet, empty, and found her lighting some sort of oil diffuser. I didn't raise my voice, just told her calmly, "Whatever problem you have with me or my cafe, let's be adults about it. We're both business people. You don't like muffins, fine, but don't make it personal." She stared at me like I'd asked her to lick the sidewalk. "Your establishment lowers the property value of this block," she said flatly. "The mismatched patio chairs, the crowds, the smells. This isn't a farmer's market. It's a neighborhood center, a brand." I chuckled. "You sell candles and affirmation stickers, Karen." Her jaw tightened. Not for long. The next week, she made her move. A vote appeared on the HOA agenda. Proposal to expand community covenants to encompass adjacent commercial properties for the sake of visual harmony and environmental wellness. It passed, barely. The result? I suddenly found myself, my cafe, my patio, my signage, under the direct regulation of the HOA board, which Karen now chaired. And it didn't take long for her to weaponize it. Within 2 weeks, I received a $250 fine for non-compliant awning colors, a $100 fine for patio crowding, 3 chairs and 2 tables, and a cease and desist for my weekend music hours. Claiming sound ordinance violations, even though we only played soft jazz. I appealed. Every time I sent documents, lease agreements, city permits, zoning maps, no response. I hired a lawyer, but Karen delayed everything with technicalities. She even emailed my landlord demanding immediate compliance or termination of lease. That's when I knew. This wasn't a rule problem, it was a siege. I didn't say much to my customers, but they noticed. One by one, people started asking why the patio was gone, why the guitar player wasn't there on Saturdays anymore, why I suddenly had to close an hour earlier. Then one morning, the most regular of my regulars, Mrs. Thompson, 82, who came every Monday for the raisin scone and Earl Grey, said something that hit me like a hammer. saw a sign down the street, she said, stirring her tea. Said your place might be closing. Said we should support more professional vendors. I blinked. Where did you see that? She pointed. Right outside that yoga place next to the candle shop. Karen's place. She had started flyering the neighborhood, warning residents that Benny's Roost was under regulatory review and may not meet community standards. She wasn't just trying to shut me down. She was trying to destroy my reputation. But here's the part she didn't know. I wasn't just a coffee guy with a dream and some muffins. I'd spent a decade working in digital operations and commercial real estate data analytics. I knew how leases worked. I knew how to read filings, assess ownerships, and most importantly, I knew where to find pressure points. So while Karen spent her energy trying to find me into submission, I went digging. And what I found was a crack in the foundation of her kingdom. Her brother, the original leaseholder of her wellness shop, had signed a commercial lease under a legacy agreement with the building's owner. But that lease expired in 42 days, and the owner? He was a client I once helped when he needed back-end database support. I still had his number, and I had an idea. Chapter 2. The Lease Trap. I didn't waste time. The same evening I discovered the lease expiration date on Karen's building, I dialed up someone I hadn't spoken to in over 4 years. Martin Dupree, the man who owned the strip of commercial units where both my cafe and Karen's shop sat. When I worked in real estate analytics, Martin was one of my best clients, sharp, savvy, but totally overwhelmed by the digital side of his growing portfolio. I had helped him digitize every lease in his commercial holdings and automated his tenant management workflows. He trusted me. "Benny?" he answered, surprised. "Wow, it's been a minute. Still roasting beans and building spreadsheets?" I chuckled. "Still brewing and still plotting, yeah." We caught up briefly, small talk about the business, his properties, and some new software headaches he was having. Then I eased into it. "Listen, I'm calling about the lease on Unit 12B, the candle shop." He paused. "Karen's place?" "Yeah," I said. "Are you aware it expires next month?" "Sure. I've got it in the calendar. I sent a reminder to renew last week." "Has she responded?" "Nothing yet. I was going to give her another week before I followed up." I took a breath. "I'd like to buy the lease." There was a short silence. Then, "You're serious?" "Dead serious. I want the rights to 12B and the option to reconfigure the unit." Martin whistled low. "This about that HOA mess she's been stirring up? She's using her commercial unit as a base to bulldoze me. She's flyering the neighborhood with lies, burying me in fake violations and leveraging HOA bylaws to strip down my cafe. I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking to survive." Martin grunted. "Well, I'll say this. She's been a pain. Called me 5 times last month demanding I repaint the parking lines to match her brand. I told her this was a strip mall, not a yoga retreat." We both laughed. He hesitated, then added, "Tell you what? Send me your proposal. If it's clean, I'll fast-track it. I don't owe her anything." By the next morning, I had a formal offer drawn up. It was simple. I'd buy out the remainder of Karen's lease as soon as it expired, and in exchange, I'd take on a 5-year option with rights to renovate the space and combine it with my cafe for expanded seating. The money? I had it. Jenna, my wife, had savings from her remote legal consulting firm, and I'd been stacking earnings since the cafe's 3rd profitable quarter. Martin accepted my offer within 48 hours. Karen's lease would officially not be renewed, but I didn't tell her, not yet. Instead, I watched her dig her own hole deeper. The week before her lease was due to expire, she filed a motion with the HOA board requesting an emergency audit of potentially disruptive commercial tenants. She pushed for a 30-day shutdown of my cafe while the board investigated customer conduct issues and parking infringements. None of it was true, but Karen didn't need truth. She needed chaos. What she didn't know was that several board members were growing tired of her antics. My neighbor Dan, who had witnessed her flyering campaign firsthand, spoke at the meeting on my behalf. So did Teresa, a local real estate agent who admitted Karen had called her office demanding to blacklist my cafe from neighborhood welcome packets. The board declined her motion unanimously. Karen stormed out of the clubhouse that night, slamming the door so hard a clock fell off the wall. I waited another day. Then I made my move. Saturday morning, I walked into her shop with a smile. She was behind the counter, arranging a row of eucalyptus-scented jars. She looked up and her eyes narrowed. "You're trespassing." I ignored her and glanced around. "Not yet." "What do you want, Benny?" "I wanted to drop off a letter," I said, pulling a crisp white envelope from my coat. "It's from Martin Dupree. You know, the property owner." She snatched the envelope, tore it open, and read. Her face blanched. "Dear Ms. Delaney, this letter serves as formal notification that your lease at Unit 12B will not be renewed. Please vacate the premises within 10 business days. All deposit returns and final walkthroughs will be coordinated through our office. Kindly note, a new leaseholder has acquired rights to the space. Sincerely, Martin Dupree." She looked up at me, speechless. You can't." "I can," I said. "I did." She pointed a trembling finger. "This is a violation of community conflict of interest laws. You weaponized your influence." "Karen," I said, "this isn't HOA property. It's a lease. You don't own this unit. You are a tenant. And now I am." She stammered. "This is retaliation." "No. This is restoration. You tried to ruin my business. I'm expanding it." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Karen, when I reopen this space, I'll be keeping the shelves. Gonna use them for a local artisans showcase. You know, people who actually support the community." I walked out as she stood frozen behind the counter, red-faced, lip twitching. That night, I slept like a baby. Karen, however, she launched one final campaign. An email blast to the neighborhood accusing me of predatory business behavior, male harassment, and unfair targeting of women-owned companies. But it backfired. Most people knew me. They knew my wife. They knew we donated muffins to the local senior center and held free coffee mornings for teachers. The next morning, a handwritten note appeared on my counter. It read, "Dear Benny, we've seen the nonsense. Just know, your cafe is the heartbeat of this block. You're not alone." The Neighborhood, Chapter 3. Karen's last stand and the grand opening that broke her. The day Karen moved out of Unit 12B felt quiet. There was no shouting, no dramatic scene, just the sound of a rental van's back doors swinging open and the occasional clink of glass jars being packed into cardboard boxes. A single assistant helped her, no friends, no customers, and certainly no HOA board members. She didn't speak to anyone as she loaded the last of her essential oils, awkward folding chairs, and her branded Karen's Calming Company sign. She left in silence. And I thought that would be the end of it. But of course, it wasn't. A week later, I was inside Unit 12B, scraping faded paint off the front windows, when a man in a charcoal suit showed up. He introduced himself as Peter Langford, attorney. "I represent Ms. Karen Delaney," he said stiffly. "She's prepared to file a motion against your lease acquisition and is requesting a temporary injunction to block all renovations." I blinked. "On what grounds?" "She alleges that your purchase of the lease constitutes unfair business practice and community disruption, citing HOA ethical standards." I had to laugh. "I'm not under HOA governance. She intends to argue that the board has influence over commercial culture in the area and—" I held up a hand. "Tell her to save it for the judge." He looked slightly rattled. "You're not taking this seriously?" "No, I am. That's why I've already filed for my business license expansion, obtained city permits for renovation, and notified zoning. She doesn't have a legal leg to stand on." I handed him a folder. Inside, a copy of the new lease city inspector approval, a signed community petition supporting the expansion, and an email from Martin confirming the purchase terms were fully compliant. Langford flipped through the documents, sighed, and said, "I'll pass this along." "Please do." He turned to leave. "And tell Karen," I added, She's welcome to visit when we open, but she'll need to buy something if she wants to sit. I poured everything into renovating that space. We tore down the divider between my cafe and the former candle shop, opening it up into a bright, airy lounge. With cozy booths, window seating, and soft lighting that turned warm in the evenings. I hired 2 new part-timers from the local high school, expanded the menu, and turned the back wall into a rotating art gallery featuring student and veteran artists. We called the new space the Roost Lounge. Opening day? Packed. Line out the door. People brought their kids, their parents, even their dogs. Some brought folding chairs and just hung out on the sidewalk, chatting and sipping cold brew. A local reporter came by. So did a city council member. Karen? She didn't show. But someone else did. Dan, one of the HOA board members. He pulled me aside and said, "Just so you know, Karen tried one more time. Last week, she pushed for a formal ethics investigation against you. Claimed you bullied your way into the space." And? The board voted 5-1 to throw it out. Even her closest allies done with her. I nodded. Appreciate the heads up. He leaned closer. Also, there's a vacancy opening on the board. You ever think about running? I smiled. I think I'll stick to muffins and mocha lattes. He laughed. Fair enough. Later that week, something happened that made everything feel full circle. I was closing up shop one evening when a frail older woman walked in, moving slowly using a cane. I recognized her, Karen's mother. She looked around the cafe, our cafe, taking in the new walls, the soft jazz, the photos of local veterans lining the hallway. She approached the counter. "Are you the owner?" "Yes, ma'am." She extended a hand, shaky but warm. "I'm Helen Delaney, Karen's mother." I nodded gently, unsure what was coming next. She smiled faintly. "I just wanted to say, this place is lovely." She may not say it, but even Karen knows she went too far. I'm sorry for what she did. I was stunned. Before I could respond, she added, "She's taking a break," moved closer to her sister, getting help. I just thought, if someone was kind enough to tell me when I went too far, maybe I wouldn't have made the same mistakes. She ordered chamomile tea, sat in the corner, didn't say another word. But her presence said everything. Weeks passed, then months. The Roost became the heart of the block. We hosted open mic nights, art showings, local fundraisers. Business boomed, but more than that, community trust bloomed. People lingered, connected. Old neighbors reconnected over cinnamon rolls. Parents met teachers. Strangers became regulars. Karen never returned, but her absence spoke louder than her noise ever did. Now, we've added a second patio, a veteran's bookshelf with free reads and donated stories. And that ugly HOA war? It's a story we tell sometimes, over coffee and muffins, to remind ourselves that bullies don't win forever, especially not when the community stands together. Drop a "she messed with the wrong muffin" in the comments if you've ever dealt with an overreaching HOA. Like and subscribe for more real-life stories where good neighbors rise and Karens fall.